really delighted to have our co-chair of the International Religious Freedom Summit, Dr. Katrina Lantos Swett, my dear friend. And Dr. Swett, there's so much I can say about her. She's the president of the Tom Lantos Foundation. Tom Lantos, the late congressman who championed human rights. The entire commission, Human Rights Commission, is named after him. In the House of Representatives, there's a hearing this afternoon covering these issues on religious freedom. Katrina has been deeply dedicated in this space in every conceivable way, whether that's academic work that she does at Tufts, where she teaches and has written extensively about these issues, but also in the leadership space. As former chair of the U.S. Commission on International, which I got to know Katrina's work, and she traveled all over the world defending this precious right for so many. And particular conference, which is an inaugural summit, to have Dr. Swett with Ambassador Brownback is kind of like an all-star team. You know, for those of you here who, you basically have the best people leading this effort. I'm very privileged and humbled, I know Drew is, to have Dr. Swett with us this morning. Dr. Swett, the floor is yours. We have, I know you just stepped in, but there's people even in the back.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited and so touched and moved to be here. And my apologies for arriving a little bit late, but it is truly a joy to be with you today. And of course, this gentleman is one I admire so greatly, and we really have become dear friends. But as I look around this room, I see so many religious freedom heroes who I love and admire, and so I'm the one who's honored to be here with you. I know you've had a lot of speakers, and it can be a little tricky to be the wrap-up speaker. You know, I will tell you all a joke. It's a little tiny bit racy, which I know is going out on a limb with this group, but it relates to a relative of mine. So, and you'll understand why I tell the joke when I talk about it being tricky to be the wrap-up speaker. So my mother was the cousin of Zsa Zsa Gabor, and I don't know if any of you remember Zsa Zsa Gabor, but she was a very famous, very charming, flamboyant Hungarian actress. I like to say that the Gabors were the Kardashians before the Kardashians, because they were sort of more famous for being famous than for anything else. But Zsa Zsa was married many, many times. I think she had a total of 9 or 10 husbands, which she insisted was actually a sign of her great moral virtue, because, you know, she said, I would never get intimate with a man unless I married him. So, you know, we can argue about that. But I once heard a speaker say, when he was the last speaker, after a number of other distinguished individuals, that he felt a little bit like Zsa Zsa Gabor's 9th husband. He knew what to do, but he wasn't sure how to make it interesting. So that's a little bit the way I feel today, having heard from so many fantastic people. And I apologize for being ever so slightly racy, but I hope you'll forgive me for that. There are so many things I could say about this cause that brings us together. It is something I have such a profound commitment to. I'm president of the Lantos Foundation for Human Rights, but I am one of those who believes quite passionately that freedom of religion, of conscience, of belief is the foundational human right. All the others that we cherish, all the others that we fight for, not only are they meaningless if that most fundamental right is not defended and protected, but really they flow from it. I mean, I think of our own Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of the press, the freedom to publish things. All of these flow, in my view, from a fundamental reverence for this foundational human right, which goes to our essential dignity. But since this is the Congressional Advisory Advocacy Breakfast, sort of a gathering, I hope in a way to inspire all of us, not just to sort of commune with our fellow travelers and those who are like-minded, but to be persuasive when we meet with those who hold the levers of power, because we want to translate our passion, our ideals, our convictions into support and leadership and real muscle behind it in the corridors of power. And so in thinking about that, I thought of an experience I had a couple of years ago. Have any of you here heard of the famous Washington letter, which was written to the synagogue in the Truro Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island? I see a few nodding heads. Well, President Washington, our first president of the United States, was invited to visit Newport, Rhode Island, and one of the groups he met there with was the synagogue, one of the earliest synagogues established in this country. And as some of you may know, my father, my late father, Tom Lantos, was the only Holocaust survivor ever elected to serve in the United States Congress. He founded the Congressional Human Rights Caucus. He went on to become the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. But this Truro Synagogue and the Washington letter was always deeply important to us because of what it symbolized. So after George Washington visited the Truro Synagogue, he wrote a beautiful letter which has become an iconic part of American history, known as the Washington Letter. And there's sort of a money phrase, if you will, a takeaway phrase from that letter that is so often cited, because he says that the government of the United States gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. And you can imagine what those words meant to the Jews of Newport, who through the centuries of Jewish history had been marginalized, persecuted, hunted, killed in so many contexts and environments. And I know when I talk about the history of the Jewish people, there are so many faith communities here that history resonates. You know whereof I speak. So a couple of years ago, I was invited to go on the occasion. Every year they read the Washington letter in a beautiful event in this very lovely historic building. So of course I did some homework and kind of began reading up a little bit so I could say something intelligent. And what I discovered, which was so fascinating to me, was that when the sexton, I think he was called, of the synagogue, Moises Sexas was his name, and I guess somehow he was the head of the congregation, although I don't believe he was the rabbi, but he was the head of the congregation, had written a letter inviting Washington to come and meet with them. And that beautiful phrase, which has been immortalized and for which George Washington is given just credit, but it actually came from the letter that Moses first wrote to Washington. The inspiration for our first president to say, to put down in his own hand, that this government gives to bigotry no sanction, persecution no assistance, was an echo of what, if you will, his constituent, his advocate, had said to him. And I share this because I think, and I don't know if there are members of Congress still here with us, but if they are, I know that they would echo. My father was a member of Congress, my husband served in Congress as well, that the best representatives are those who, with not just an open door, but with an open heart, welcome those with knowledge, with passion, with experience, who come to them to say, will you be our advocate? Will you be our hero or our heroine? Will you take our cause forward? Because